and welcome to another edition of Application Development Today. My name is Don Jackson. I'm a Chief Technologist here at OpenText, and I'm also their host of Application Development Today. And with me today, I've got Mr. Diego Dora, and our topic is going to be ensuring assurance of SAP. And I know what some of you guys are going to give me grief about, right? Ensuring assurance, isn't that redundant all over again? Absolutely it is. But anybody who spend any time with in meetings with me knows that I like to have a little fun with language, especially when I have somebody whose English is not their first language. So it's absolutely a thrill to have you here, Diego. Diego and I have been working together now for over a couple years, probably about 3 years now. So Diego, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Absolutely. So my name is Diego Dora. I'm the founder and chief architect of Div Consulting, and I'm also an SAP mentor. Later on, we can explain what that means. But in a nutshell, I have been working with SAP technology for the past 18 years, in the software industry for roughly 25. And yes, a little bit of our expertise is working with new SAP technologies, bring innovation to customer. And what we always say about innovation is it has to be innovation with purpose. And this is what we have been doing with OpenText for the past few years, just bringing some of that innovation into the ALM space.
And ALM being application lifecycle management. So, all right. So, you know what? You opened the door there. So I'm just going to ask it. What is an SAP mentor?
Good question. So an SAP mentor is just a specific type of person that depending on the year at the time we're handpicked or nominated by other SAP mentor. Basically, what we do is just to provide feedback to SAP, the different product teams and the different executives at SAP about the current trends on the market, product standards, feedback about the SAP products, and we are considered some type of expert, trying to be humble here. But in a nutshell, what we do is that just we mentor SAP to be more in line with the market and with the customers that they're working, and also the partners like we are at Div Consulting as well.
Awesome. So, when I say I consider you one of the experts and one of my go-tos for SAP, this is why, right? It's not just me that thinks that it's recognized by SAP as well as an SAP mentor. So that's wonderful to hear. So speaking of SAP, it's almost like we wanted to talk about SAP today. I don't know why, that came up. So. There's this small event that's occurred inside of the SAP ecosystem. It's called S/4HANA. For those of you who've never heard of it, what's S/4HANA and what is this titanic shift really that's happening for customers and users of SAP going from ECC to S/4HANA?
That's a great question. So S/4HANA is the next evolution on ERP from SAP. For those who are wondering what ERP is, it's Enterprise Resource Planning. So basically, in 2015, SAP released the first version of S4 with the intent of having all their current ECC customers to slowly but surely shift into S4. Some of the high-level characteristics.
Wait a second, now I got to do math, right? I need 2 fans for this one. That's like 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
Cool.
Yeah. So it has been a while, but as people in the industry around ERP systems know, this takes a while. It's a highly complex type of project to migrate from ECC to S4. But just to keep short and accurate, what S4 is in terms of technology is a shift in technology stack. So you go to having any DB, any database, to focus on SAP HANA, which is the proprietary database from SAP, which is a memory computing database. It's a wonderful thing. Has a lot of things that it would take me 3 podcasts to discuss about, but it's just shifting into that from a technology point of view. And then on top of it, there is a huge transformation in pushed by technology innovation, pushed by these new technologies that impacts heavily how the applications work on SAP, and mainly just there is also a big shift from SAP GUI to SAP Fiori applications, which are basically web-based applications, right? This is very high level, but I think the key thing for people to understand is that this is not a technical migration. A lot of consulting companies at the very beginning, they thought, oh, this is just migrating from AnyDB to SAP HANA, and it's not. This is, a full migrate, an end-to-end migration that has a heavy involvement of the business in order to be effective. And the good thing about S4, we're going to have support until 2040. So I'm not going to let you do the math. I'm going to do it for you. So that means 17 years from now. So this is the future.
Well, I don't have that many fingers, so
it's okay. I have my feet. But it is where everybody in the SAP space should be looking, in their 2, 3, 4, or 5 years plan and trying to hop into their next S4 release.
So this sounds like it's well beyond, as you said, instead of just a technical migration, going from one version to the next, it sounds like it's a transformative activity, right? It's a transformation that you're talking about. So how do you make sure that the business can still run through SAP during that transformation from ECC to S4HANA, right?
Yeah.
So, for most people who are SAP customers, SAP is mission critical, right? SAP down is no, right? It's just no. It
it's
just
impossible.
Can't happen, right?
Yeah, it can't happen.
No, SAP's down. No, the answer is no. It can't be down, right? So how do you ensure though that the business can still run while you're doing this transformation? I mean, I use the analogy, and lots of people have used this analogy before. I don't want to take credit where credit's not due. Of we're gonna change the engines on the airplane while we're in flight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good analogy. So there's many aspects to it. There's different ways of approaching a migration from ECC to S4. I think one of the most important phases is the initial assessment. When you are doing the migration from ECC to S4, there's a series of really great tools that allows you to assess your current code base. How that will fit into the S4 world, if you want to call it in a way. And from there, it's just assessing the different aspects of the modules that you have implemented based on your business areas, and taking a look at, one of the many things that we discuss on, I would say, a weekly basis with you, Don, is just how do you do the regression testing, and how do you keep all that tidy, so whenever you move into your S4, there is no surprises, right? So that's one of the key things. So a very strong initial assessment in combination with a technical team and the business team to understand the business transformation that S4 brings into the table, and then it's just all about that automation in different aspects, among many of those, testing, regression testing, and understanding there is a shift in technology. So the methods that you used to use before to test will not be sufficient, and you need to upgrade your testing capabilities.
So you talked about, doing this assessment and this technical assessment, including, looking at your custom code that you have in there. So
yes.
Let me, from an end user perspective, right? So that's how I started my SAP journey as an end user, and then went into the testing of it. My perspective is that like most commercially available off-the-shelf software, right? COTS software. Ideally, you want to have 80% standard and 20% customized.
Correct.
My experience as a customer at the companies that I've worked at, and with customers since I've come to what's now OpenText, is that it's a lot of times the reverse, right? Mm-hmm. It's 80% custom and 20% standard. So instead of focusing only on what your business differentiating capabilities are and customizing that, they customize everything, Whereas, if you really think about, for example, creating a sales order is creating a sales order. Everybody, it really should be standard, right? Everybody creates a sales order. You have products, You have units of measure, you have quantity, you have price, you have what master data you have to set up ahead of time, and it creates this transactional data for the sales order, right? So realistically, that, for example, shouldn't be customized. But maybe you have, some special pricing thing that you do with your contracts that are absolutely unique and business differentiating for your business. That's where you do your customization. So what's the phrase? Keep the core clean.
Keep the core clean. Yes.
Keep the core clean. Leading question there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, so it seems like you're really supposed to not just be doing this technical transformation, but this business transformation, which you've alluded to and said a couple times, right? Is really evaluating your business and how you run your business through SAP and changing that so that you can focus on what is really differentiating for your business. Thus, you're also reducing your risk when it comes to accepting service packs and accepting upgrades because you've done less customization, right? You've kept the core clean. But there's so it's great that we talked about testing it, and you talked about your methodology may or may not be sufficient for what you did before, right? So my first SAP exposure from a testing perspective is we were implementing R3. Okay.
Long time ago.
As I've said multiple times on this series, I've earned my white beard, right?
Yes, indeed.
I'm chronologically gifted. But there's just so many options and so many things. How do you make sense of all of this, of all these different ways of making sure that your business can still work in your SAP environment, both on your ECC while you're doing your transformation, and your destination of S/4HANA? How do you make sense of all of it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think it's different for each customer, but I think the most important aspects of this is just to understand where what do you have, right? Not all customers have all the modules of ECC, and not all customers are going to have all modules of S4. But what we all we know from a user point of view, and then eventually from a testing point of view, is that if you're in ECC, most likely the majority of your applications, they're running via the GUI. Some versions of ECC are, they upgrade to have SAP Fiori. So now you understand that your test, approach will also have to cover web applications. If you are in Fiori, you need to understand that some of those Fiori apps are running on mobile. So now you also have to, include a strategy for mobile testing. All right. Something that I like a lot from the past few years, and I will say that some of this information was brought up, by our relationship between our companies, is that there is a tendency in the market for a smart, if you want to call it in a way, testing, where you use AI models, pre-trained AI models on the different elements, on whether is it the SAP GUI UI, is it Fiori theme in particular, where you can just start to acknowledge different objects and just start writing tests in a more smart way, where you're not fixed to the specific elements on the screen. Of course, you can still do it like that, but I think there is some tendencies or trends in the market that now I cannot mention ChatGPT because everybody's talking about it. But now with the with the coming out, if you want to go in a way, of ChatGPT or GPT 3.5, as many others know it, people are starting to think about, okay, AI is not just a buzzword. There is actually a lot of value in this. So how can I take advantage of that?
Or you can have negative value when you look at Bard. What happened with Bard?
No comments.
We won't talk about that. No comments there.
No comments. We are a Google Cloud partner, so no comments. But
I think that the lesson on that, though, is not that look, everyone who's ever done a demo ever has made mistakes in a demo, right? Let's be honest, right?
Yeah,
everyone has done it. But I think the real lesson that we should learn at it from a market perspective is how important AI really is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That that this Bard demo that and if you don't know about it, you're welcome to go Google what I'm talking about, right? That essentially there was a demo that there was some errors happened in the demo process,
the responses were not the expected one. Let's be like this.
yeah, and so it caused some negative perception, and these things happen. But I think the more important thing from my perspective is that AI is super important and isn't just coming. It's
here right? to stay.
It's here and here for here to stay. So when you talk about SAP, smart SAP testing, I like to call it intelligent SAP testing. I'd like to say intelligent instead of SAP, because why instead of smart, why use one syllable when you can use three, right?
The intelligent enterprise, as SAP says as well. So there you have it.
The intelligent enterprise, right? So I mean, it aligns well, right? But SAP, from an SAP testing perspective, I think one of the big things that a lot of people talk about is they say, well, I've got all of these scripts that I've written, these test automation scripts that I've written, whether you're talking about functional test automation or security testing, or you're talking about performance testing. I've got all these tests that I've written in ECC. Can't I just run them in the new environment? And I always answer, and maybe you want to say, Don, you're crazy, but I always answer with an unequivocal no. And the reason is because of what we talked about earlier. This is not just a lift and shift of technology that you're just, changing your back end system. You're also changing your business process, right? So the individual steps that you do to go from the beginning of your business process through to your end of your business process has changed. So even if you had adopted what we're talking about with artificial intelligence object detection, or AIOD, to recognize objects without using the underlying object properties, which we have in our solutions today, and we've had for a while now. Even if you had done that, the steps have changed, right? And the order that it's happening has changed. So you can't just point it at the new environment and have it work, because that's not how the business runs through the software anymore. So it then becomes a question of, okay, so now that we've done this business, let's assume that we're done with this business transformation and this technical transformation, we've gone into our S4 environment. How do I determine, as part of that transformation initiative, what do I test and why do I test that, right? Because to be honest, we all understand you can't test everything. There's never been a case where you could test everything when it comes to software. Now, I could make the argument that there are some cases where you do have to test everything, like using my analogy earlier of plane. I'm assuming that the plane manufacturers of the world, the Lears, the Boeings, the Airbus, everything gets tested. At least I hope so, and that's the faith I'm putting into it when I get on a plane, is that everything's been tested and rigorously tested, right?
Yes.
That failure is not okay. But in an SAP environment, how do you determine what should I test? Because keep in mind, I'm buying a COTS software, commercially available off-the-shelf software, right? One would think that there was testing already done on this software. How do I determine what to test and why?
Yeah. So what to test? There are different tools. One of the tools that we still even recommend to these days is BPCA, which is a business process change analyzer. There you go. Then we have it on the screen. But basically, this is a solution that comes in Solution Manager that allows you to pick up different logs from the actual system and understand really where the changes actually happen and what's the usability of those changes. And from there, just understand that, if I make a change into a system, right? Let's suppose that we go live with S4 and we make a series of changes on a Fiori app, or a series of changes on some background jobs that we have, and so on and so forth, for a specific module of a specific business area of my company. I don't have to regression test absolutely everything. I should regression test whatever was impacted by this change. So tools like BPCAs allows you to do that, more fine-grained, accurate analysis of what actually happened and what actually was impacted by my order transfer request, and then just create a test plan out of specifically that, and take my scripts and everything that I already have and just run it through. So that's one approach that you can take in order to define what what you have to test. Of course, when you're starting at the very beginning, you will have to test absolutely everything because you're implementing it, and for that, there are different ways to go about it. But
I want to ask you. I want to drill in a little bit into BPCA. So you talked about being able to recognize that, and for those of you who've been around for and tried to do BPCA, there's been varying levels of success with people with BPCA.
Yes.
And what can somebody do? So here's the argument that I will hear and I hear frequently is, in order for me to do BPCA, there's so much that I have to set up ahead of time to get it to work correctly that it's just not worth it. I can't get all that done and then maintain it too, right? So for example, I need to set up my BPH, my business process hierarchy, right? So I have to set that. How do I set that up, right? That's a whole lot of manual effort that I got to do that. And then I have to, attach my technical objects to my BPH notes, my business process hierarchy notes. Then I need to have a TBOM, a technical bill of materials that I put in there. And well, there's like 3 different ways that I can do T-bombs as well, right? I can do static T-bombs, semi-dynamic T-bombs, or dynamic T-bombs. How do I do that? So what from your experience as an SAP mentor, what would you say to somebody of how can I accelerate or how can I offload some of that work? Is there, for example, on the BPH, is there some way that I could have it, I don't know, look at my existing system, because I'm already running. In most cases, I'm already running. I'm not doing a complete greenfield environment, right? Is there some way that I can build that up?
So the business process hierarchy is something that usually there's different ways to go about it. Of course, you can just do it manually. There is currently SAP is heavily promoting SAP Signavio. That for those who are not familiar with it, it's just a very useful tool for transformation projects like this, to do an exploration of your different processes and existing ones that you have at your company, and then based on that, do different analysis. And you can, from Signavio, you can push data into the business process hierarchy. What I will say is that the majority of the customers, even though they don't enjoy building the BPH, they do find value on the consequences of having nurture business process hierarchy in their system. And in terms of the discussion about the T-bombs, which is semi-dynamic or dynamic, and the amount of data they need to collect, to those people, I will also say the same thing. It's like, well, this is due diligence that you have to do in order to have an accurate reflection of what really is impacting your system, because there is a high level of promotion around static code analysis, or static analysis of the changes in the system. And the reality of that is that it just doesn't really properly represent what actually changed in the system. I could modify one function that is being called in 1,000 different places, but there's this part of that code that is for the given process is not really being executed whatsoever. So from that point of view, I think I will say it is worth investment. Even we have some of these discussions in the past, and I will say, as well, to the BPCA overall, I think there is not enough knowledge to understand the capabilities that it brings to the table, in the sense of, like, there is a lot of people disregarding the potential that it has to add value into the organization, and they simply go into the next easy thing to do in terms of static analysis, which I think it is a valid approach. It's just not the best. It is also not the most accurate, and that is what I focus for the most part, is accuracy.
So accuracy, you talk about accuracy. I think about, when it comes to change impact analysis. And by the way, there's on the Micro Focus YouTube channel, Micro Focus is now OpenText, but on the Micro Focus YouTube channel, we have a session that talks about change impact analysis for SAP, specifically around a concept to accelerate the creation and maintenance of dynamic T-bombs to address this specific challenge that there is. Because when you talk about precision and accuracy, if I'm going to, as a business, so you think about this as a business, if you're the business owner, if I'm going to focus my testing efforts based on the results of this change impact analysis, and I'm not going to test other stuff, I better be sure on the accuracy of what that is, because otherwise, I could not test an area that is critical to my business that actually did have a change. And now it's gone out there and I have a high risk exposure, and you don't want to ever be the cause of a risky decision that comes back to bite you, right? You think of there's always examples that are on financial and business publications about technical changes that happen that weren't properly tested, and therefore they lost $100 million, right? Or they, or worse yet, a company went out of business, right? There are many companies that have gone out of business because of technical changes that weren't handled properly. For example, I can think of one like Knight Capital. Now that was a deployment challenge where things weren't deployed properly, but there's lots of examples of that. So we talked about how to determine what to test, and we talked about that there's so many options, how to make sense of it all, but how does this all fit together, right? So we talked about at the very beginning that SAP is absolutely critical part of my business, right? Very frequently, it's the backbone of my business.
Yes.
But it's not the only application in my business, right? Mm-hmm. There is a superset of applications, of products that get delivered that most everybody has, not just SAP, is as much as SAP would prefer that we have everything SAP. Just like I would say I would prefer that you buy everything from OpenText. That's not the realistic realistic and view of the world, is that there's a superset of business processes. So how do you handle tracking all of this information? Just tracking SAP is a challenge in itself. How do you track everything where SAP is a subset of your business processes?
That's a good question. What is your opinion about that?
That's where I raise my hand and I go, hi, we're from OpenText, and we have wonderful solutions that work on not just SAP and other solutions. But you've got a lot of experience in the SAP marketplace. Is your view of what happens with customers? Do they, and which is better, right? So I've seen both. I've seen where you have this definite demarcation between my SAP teams over here and my non-SAP teams over here, and the two shall not talk except for the developers who have to do the integrations, and Lord hopes that it works. Somebody sometimes does testing between them. Now I've seen other ones which the opposite, where we have people that focus on the business and the business processes that flow through all of the applications. Because you might, for example, have a different front end system, right? That's like a custom Java application that's heavy JavaScript that's running in production, right? Customer orders product on there.
Yeah.
But the backend system for that is SAP, right? So it creates the order in SAP. It goes through all of the fulfillment steps in there, but it's pinging back out to that front end application so that the customer gets notified of, my order status, my order history, if I want to cancel an order or refund an order, something like that. So the front end might be this custom Java application. In the back end, everything's underpinned by SAP.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And from my view, I would rather. Sorry, I'm leading the witness, Your Honor.
Leading
Sorry,
the witness.
I object to myself
Yeah.
leading the witness. But
Mhm.
I would think that the better answer is that you test the full business process, that you test that business process end to end
Yeah.
with a solution set that allows you to track that and then can be agnostic to what that underlying technology set
Absolutely,
is.
yeah. No, that's a very good point. What I can say is depends. I think you know that I worked for many years in the EMEA region. Mainly Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. It's not the same worldwide, right? The adoption of SAP technology is not the same, and some of the customers that I used to have there, that I have today, they are considered SAP shops. What do I mean by that? Is that everything that they do is SAP based. From beginning to end, everything is SAP. And I would say to those cases, which are not the common thing. Yes, just if you want to have dedicated, if you want to have everything on your BPH, and if you want to use everything proposed by SAP, it makes sense and it is understandable, right? Because you have, your one-stop shop for everything, and that's fine. But the reality is, as you were mentioning before, is I would say 90% of the customer, if not more, they have a plethora of systems, and this is something that I encountered a while ago with ServiceNow. For example, Solution Manager has an ITSM module for creating incidents and managing incidents. 4 or 5 years ago, there was a big push by ServiceNow, and after that, there was a demand of integration between ServiceNow and Solution Manager ITSM, and also change management, the charm module, because you do have a superseding system that actually sees everything at the company from an incident management and change management point of view. And the same thing happens, for business processes and testing. For the most part, a customer that wants to be efficient on how they spend their dollars and how do they train their people, because it's also important that at the end of the day, there's people actually operating these systems. And if you need to learn how to test with two different tools that at the end of the day aren't doing the same thing, or they're testing, but one is for testing one application and one is for testing another application, it is not the most efficient thing. You could have your reasons, and those reasons could be very valid for your organization. But I will say, in my experience and as a general approach, you need to look for kind of the best breed solution, if we want to call it a way, where, and of course, that solution has to be open to deal with SAP, deal with Salesforce, deal with other solutions, and be able to manage the challenges, I would say challenges from each of those platforms, and the variety of elements that you need to deal with, and the nuances of each of those.
Well, Diego, I've thoroughly enjoyed our session so far. Are there any parting shots that you want to make to us about the topics of SAP and ensuring the assurance of SAP before we call it a session?
I will say, keep the core clean. As you mentioned before, a wonderful phrase coined in 2017. And so keep the core clean. If you have to do modifications, think about SAP Business Technology Platform as your innovation platform. Also understand that comes with more modern ways of doing development with DevOps practices and think alike. And look for a company, I'm not going to name any names, maybe OpenText, that has the strategy that cool function on BTP, business technology platform is BTP, with technologies like Java, Node.js, and web technologies overall, but at the same time being able to deal with the more legacy, if we want to call it a way, SAP GUI technologies and related topics like that. So yeah, that's my parting gift for our audience today. If you want to hear a little bit more about the wonderful things about the SAP world, just look us up on LinkedIn, Div Consulting. And as you know, I'm always open to have a good chat about technologies, quality, and whatnot. So happy to help our audience to find their way in the SAP world.
Well, thank you again, Diego, for taking the time today from Diff Consulting. I thoroughly enjoyed the call, the conversation, and tune in for the next episode, which is going to be an episode called Shift Everywhere. Shift left, shift right, and shift up. What's shift up, you ask? Well, you have to tune in to find out. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
If you like the video, please click the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when we release new videos.